Hey guys, and today is a short video on safe binding because recently I've seen a lot of different things, whether it's on Tumblr or YouTube or the general web, on binding, whether it's for cosplay or for trans people binding, and it seemed a little unsafe, so I'm going to do a quick do and do not when it comes to binding, and hopefully it helps you a little. So I'm going to show you some good examples of binding, in my opinion good types of binding and good binders, and some not so good binders. So we're going to start with some not so good binders. So the first thing I would like to say is this is all relative, and you might be someone who's naturally very small chested, in which case it might be slightly different for you, but this is from a health point of view and from personal experience and from friends' personal experience. So the first thing I'd like to show you is this. Now it looks pretty much just like a piece of fabric, and this is a Chinese chest binder, and I would say do not use this, especially if you're any size over an A cup, because this is the largest you can get and it barely goes around someone who has an A cup size chest. These are really bad for you. Like the amount of tightening they do and the lack of flexibility, like look at that, you can barely pull it. I could probably, rip it if I tried to pull it hard enough. So I'd really advise not using them, and this is very hard because these are the cheap things you get off eBay for about £1, if that. And it's maybe not so bad if you're going to cosplay for maybe an hour, but if you're going to be binding for 8 to 12 hours a day, don't use this, please, because it can really do some damage. The thing I'm going to talk about is sports bras. So this is really ideal if you are a cosplayer and you don't want to pay 30 quid for a binder, for a good binder, is doing sports bras. Now you can do two different types. You can either use one sports bra, which is your normal size, and just wear that. Another thing which I've done before but I'm not sure how safe it is get 2 sports bras which they have to be your size, and put one on frontwards and one on backwards, and that should compress it a little. But that being said, it has to be your size. You can't go small. The smaller you go, the more compression there is and the less area there is to breathe, which is why ideally you want to buy a binder made for binding. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is a brand called Underworks, which in the UK is quite known for binders, which is this. So this was my first ever binder, and I'm going to tell you why I advise against it, in my opinion, and you can make your own decision on whether you want it. So this is good because it's quite cheap. It's about £15 on Amazon. The only thing I would say that's bad about it is, you can see this is a full body one, and for me personally, I could not wear this for more than 4 to 6 hours without feeling faint and having to take it off because I was going to pass out. I once wore it for 8 hours and I actually fainted. And this is because you can't see it over a video, but it feels really like a bulletproof almost material. It's really tough and really thick and not much flexibility. And basically Underworks binders were originally designed for men who have had surgery, particularly on the stomach. So this was designed for keeping things in once you've had a surgery, not for keeping the top in. So it is a really good, admittedly, really good at binding at the top, but it's really hard to breathe in, especially a full length one. You've got no flexibility in your abdomen for breathing. You've got a very little rib cage movability in it because you're all in a tight one of these, yeah? Okay, so the next one is the one that I personally use a lot, and I know most trans guys end up using this eventually, and this is a GC2B, and this is one of their nude ones, which it probably needs a wash, but as you can see it's a lot shorter than Underworks, and the material is a lot more flexible and breathable, and it only has the binding bit on the chest bit, as you can see in here. And this to me is my first choice because it's almost like a sports bra in length. So you've got from here down breathability, so your ribs can move to pretty much their full extent, and your stomach isn't constricted. And basically they're really flexible and they're pretty cheap, to be honest. I'll put links to both Underworks and GC2B in the description below so you can check them out yourselves, but these are known for being really good for you. But I know there are a few other binder brands out there and I've never personally used them, so I'm not going to talk about them. But my general rule is, if it's a half top binder, so like this size, wrong way up, if it's like this, you'll be okay. So there's some flexibility. But remember to always look at reviews, because you may prefer to use one like this because it's a bit cheaper, a bit easier to get, and it does bind a bit better. So it's honestly up to you. You need to remember, never bind with bandages. This is a big thing. You can never, full stop, bind with a bandage. Because if you do, bandages are designed to constrict every time you move. So they constrict and constrict and constrict, and they can cause really bad rib or lung damage. Also advise you always have to follow instructions on websites on how to measure yourself. So it's normally measuring under here, measuring here, and then they tell you, from your bust size. To always try and follow instructions, because if you're not going to follow instructions, you can't be guaranteed to have a safe binding. Or, it's always about your own personal stuff. So if you're going to bind for more than 8 hours, which you shouldn't bind for more than 8 hours, that's at your own risk, and you've got to expect that you may either get winded or there could be worse things. If you're wanting to have top surgery, it can be really bad if you overbind, because it can damage your chest tissue, and that can potentially damage your chances of getting top surgery done successfully. Now, it's very rare that this can happen, but it can happen. Ask a trans health blog, or do lots of research before you start binding or before you join a certain binding type, because otherwise you could damage yourself, and that's not good because we want you to be healthy. Yeah, this is very quick, as it were, and it's just a quick overall. Remember, make your own best judgment on how to bind safely, and it's very roughly telling you what you should try and avoid and what you should maybe lean towards. So if you've got any questions, send me a message, whether it's down here on the YouTube or on my Tumblr, which will also be linked because I'm on that quite a lot and more likely to respond probably. But yeah, so this was a quick do and do not, I guess, and good luck guys, I will see you soon. Bye! Hey guys, just a quick thing, I know it's the end, but it's just a reminder, don't listen to pop culture when it talks about binding. So when it talks about like Ruby Rose's music video where she binds, please make sure not to do it how she does it, because that's really unsafe. And they only show binding that way for aesthetic purposes. So yeah, just a quick reminder, always make sure you do research before you start binding. Okay, bye!